finished up everything I needed to handle, and actually looked at my next send-in console, and it was a Trinity, and I just did one of those yesterday, so I really didn't want to live stream another one. So I grabbed one of the ones off my shelf. So this is technically my console. It will be for sale via store.weekendmodder.com. But this is an E-Series Slim, which I previously identified as being a 4 gig onboard NAND. So this is that latest, greatest style. The manufacture date on the back of there, if we can get it to focus maybe, is 2013-10. Come on, focus. There we go, 2013-10. So October 2013 does put it into the Corona edition. So it's pre-June of 2014, which is really what you're looking for. So gonna go ahead and open this one up. The sidewalls on these actually just come off way easier. You'd want a really strong flat tool to just wedge into the side and get down behind there, and then it just works up while you're holding upward pressure with your thumb in there. Alright, Wi-Fi module. Oh, I've still got the little bit in there. Wi-Fi module. Now on the back of this one, I'll do that. And then we undo the clamp that's down in here. And we should be able to separate this one as well. There it goes. And that'll come right off. Now the front faceplate's a little tricky on these. The bezel from the side, you can see it a little better. The bezel is actually wider than the front faceplate, so you have to take that off before you can remove the faceplate. So the way that I do this is I keep my power supply here, and I have adapters from fat to slim E-style. So this coupler goes on there, and this is an E-style power supply. We'll plug right into the back there. And what I'll do is I'll actually just press the eject button on the console, or power it, and then eject. And then I'll just immediately cut the power, leaving the drive open. Then you can close it to about 90% of the way. And then the way that I do this is to apply a rocking pressure from the bottom arcing towards outward, and the faceplate will just kind of snap off there, and then the disc tray can go all the way back in. If you don't remove this first, the faceplate won't come off because it's wider at the sides than that is. So now that the faceplate's off, it's just a matter of all the screws on the bottom. I'm on a roll today, yes sir. Any good stealth servers? I didn't do the review like I mentioned in an old video, so only one I know that's definitely recommended as the default is Ninja, just because it works, like, for sure. But there are lots of other good options out there. I don't officially endorse anybody. So there's the screw in the hard drive tray. Alright, so that's all the big ones. Change out the tip. Alright, got those out. Now on the faceplate side of things, on this one, it's very similar to the other style. There is a mechanism in here that is looped around for the faceplate, but the top side comes off much easier typically on these. So usually what you can do is just tilt the top back off. Did I miss a screw? I totally did. Right there. You guys are distracting. So Ninja is a good stealth server. Ninja is a functional stealth server. I'm not... Yes, it's good in that it works, I guess. Is an RGH Elite worth it? Sure, why not? Falcon or Jasper could be a really good RGH. So that, you saw how that just tilted up and then pulled out and came off, right? So we have just the faceplate remaining. So what you can do is really carefully give that some distance. And then what you'll see is down here, the faceplate cable is actually adhesively anchored to the metal casing. So if you grab as close as you can and just give it a firm, slow pull, you will peel off that adhesive and be completely floppy there. And that's one of the things you don't want to do, is leave the thing hanging by that. At that point I set them up, and then the mechanism on the front of these is actually really easy to operate. You just flick that switch forward, so it goes up, that's like open position, and then just take the connector right out of there. So this clear bit was wrapped around the back side here, but once this was open, it all came out. Do I do this because I actually make money? Yeah, I make, it's not my living, right? I have a regular day job that I work 40 hours a week and whatever, but I would not still be doing this if I wasn't making money at it. It's hard to walk away from knowing how to do this and knowing that it's money, not easy money, I guess, but it's like it's work from home, right? So anytime I want to, I can pretty much like go work some overtime sort of thing, and I don't know, that's kind of how it works out. So DVD drive out, fan shroud out, DVD support out, caddy out, and now let's learn what we can about the motherboard from here. So the first thing that should jump out at you is that this is a Corona 4 gig. I'm going to pull up the image if I can find it here. Tools, docs, images, Corona 4 gig, 4 gig NAND. I made an image one time. It's hanging up on the wall behind me. I printed it out. But I don't seem to have it in software anymore. Or, oh, you know where it might be? Sorry guys, you get the benefit of me digging for stuff since this is just raw material live stream footage. At a way better rate. My rate is cheaper? I don't know. I feel like I charge a fair amount for what I do. I've been accused many times of being too expensive. So I don't know. Corona, man. There we go. I found the image. Look at that. Go me. Alright. So this is the image. So what I want to point out is on the left side here, when you look at the NAND pad, right? So you look at the NAND area right here, right below this line of traces. So here's your NAND header on a Corona. Any Corona is going to have the vertical bit identical to a Trinity, and instead of having another vertical bit like a Trinity, it's oriented sideways, right? So that's definitely Corona. So you come down here and look at the NAND. And what I pay attention to is, does this chip extend all the way to this row of connectors here? So if you go back to the image that I'm showing you, 4 gig NANDs, the little chip in here or the bigger version. In either case, they don't touch the row of pins, right? The row of connectors, the solder pads, whatever you want to call them. So since that doesn't touch, that tells me this is a 4 gig NAND. On all of the 16 gig NANDs, the NAND chip goes from all the way from one end to the other and actually touches on those solder pads. So 16 gig or meg, I might have said gig the first time, sorry. 16 megabyte NANDs, which are the ones that you can read and write via the NANDEX or JR program or whatever, touch. And the 4 gig NANDs, which you need an SD tool or that sort of thing, those are not touching the edge. So that's how I think about the distribution there. There's a lot of people that worry about Corona V1, V2, V3, whatever. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, is it 4 gig? Is it 16 megabyte? So there's your decision point. All right, so we know this is 4 gig. The other thing that we can learn to tell us here is up near the header, right? So we're not going to be using this header at all because we're not reading the NAND via this. We will use this header, but only for the power, ground, E, and F points, right? So those are the points that we'll connect to. We're not actually doing any NAND reading writing. We're just using the power, ground, E, and F points. But what you can do is look right here, R2C7 and R2C6, I think. Yeah, R2C6 right there. These are missing. Look, see, resistor, resistor, capacitor, open, not bridged, open, not bridged, resistor, resistor, right? The fact that these are not bridged, first of all, tells us we're going to have to bridge them. These are carrying the signal for E and F up to this point. And this was Microsoft's attempt to thwart some RGHers by not putting a bridge there. They don't get signal to these pads. In theory, you could just solder your RGH wires right here, but these are kind of delicate, so I like to bridge them using a little bit of resistor leg and solder, or you could just do a solder bridge if you're good enough for it, and we'll go through that. So number one, it tells us that we're going to have to bridge these. And number two, it tells us that from my experience with about 90% accuracy, if these resistors are missing, then the console is also going to be missing the traces under the heatsink here for the post point, the point C. So you're going to have to use a Postfix adapter, which is that little bracket that goes around the CPU. So within just moments of opening the console, we've already ascertained it's 4 gig. We're going to need a 4 gig tool. We're going to need to bridge these spots. And with about 90% certainty, we're going to need a Postfix adapter to get this console done. I definitely have those, so it's not a problem. In fact, let me go grab one so I can show you what it looks like. So here's a Postfix adapter. I'll cut it open here. Sorry, getting adjusted back into my chair. If you buy a console from me, can you pay extra for express shipping? So you might not feel like you need to. My standard shipping is guaranteed to leave me within 3 business days, and shipped via priority mail, which is a 2 or 3 business day service. So 5 business days is already pretty darn quick. I don't really offer anything faster than that. So this is the Postfix adapter. We'll go through its install later, but it will actually go around the CPU under the heatsink. We'll have to remove that. This seems so long-winded. Good job. You get paid. I should get paid. Yeah, sorry, I'm talking a lot. I apologize. I'll just keep doing it. All right. I won't stop to talk specifically to talk anymore. I will just keep working and talk about what I'm doing. I didn't use, so fiberglass scratch pin, brighten up the surface on those so that my solder and everything adheres a little better, which actually I totally just did this one and didn't need to at all. hit those two little spots, R2, C5, and 6, and then this whole set of pads here. And then actually there's one connection that goes to that side of that crystal right here. Alright, so the flux I'm going to need is going to be up here in this area. I'm going to need a little bit on those things, and I'm going to need a glob of it down here, and then I'm going to need a little here. Try to hit all the spots kind of at once. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to just pre-tin my spots on this header. So remember, this one I scratched pinned and I didn't have to. So now I'm just going to go ahead. Oh, maybe I should turn the thing on. What's the difference between the Postfix adapter V1 and V2? The difference is simply the number of connections it has. So this is like a direct length one. On the V2, it's got a bigger PCB and it's got numbers on it, and that represents the approximate faked length. Basically a variable wire length on the C point can sometimes make a difference for boots. So the Postfix adapter just allows you to specify the wire length without actually using a longer wire. At the end of the day, it really makes no functional difference. V1, V2 can both be used to accomplish exactly the same things. If you really need to play with a wire length for a boot setting, you can simply actually use wire. So there I bridged for a second. And I'm using a little bit of excessive solder on these, but that's kind of intentional. And then I'll brush across those points here that I'm going to be bridging here momentarily. So I started out with buying some 0 ohm resistors, aka bridges, to bridge these two little points that we need to do here, E and F, for the E and F points. But I really didn't feel like I was, or excuse me, that's smaller than 0603. The 0 ohm resistors that I bought were 0603. This is whatever is one size smaller than that. So what I do is I take these little resistors or capacitors that I have a little bin full of that I just keep around for basically only this purpose, and I cut little small segments of their legs. So like this is a capacitor that came with a Team Executor kit of some kind, and it's got the wire or the stronger lead type to it, but it's still very flexible, as you can see. So what I'll do is actually snip a really small length of this off. So 2 small links, right? So there's my 2 little bits, and I'm going to relocate these guys over here so I can put the console back, and then you'll see I'll bring them into the console and use them to bridge those spots. So sorry for the shaky cam. Alright, so what I'm going to do first is my iron is relatively clean here. I'm going to actually put a little buildup of solder on the end of it. I'm going to reach over and grab one of those little links of capacitor leg that I had here. I'm going to hold it in place, and then I'm going to just kind of drag my solder over there, and I'm going to create a bridge. And it's actually extending a bit further than it really has to this way, but it effectively bridges that, and it's just way easier than trying to fight with creating the solder bridge without any sort of metal or additional help, right? So I'm being real careful not to touch the tiny little resistors next to it here. I'm making sure that I only make contact with my capacitor leg and bridge that point. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the stream. Just a quick reminder for those who are just joining us, this is not meant to be a expert level tutorial thing with no further review. I am capturing raw material for future tutorial videos, and I figured I might as well stream it at the same time. But I am performing an RGH on a 4 gig Corona E series. So hang out and watch. Alright, so the next step of what I would do is use the SD tool here. This is a reusable tool that will allow me to read and write to the 4 gig NAND. So there is a layout to these pins, which I'm intentionally showing you this thing oriented sideways because that is the same, come on, focus camera, that is the same orientation that my image is in, because this is how I like to work on it. So what we have here is a blown up image that I've marked up that corresponds the numbers on the pads that I'm going to be working on to the numbers on the SD tool. So it's going to be difficult to see. Maybe I can get it to focus. Yeah, there you go. So you can see at the bottom there, this SD card or SD tool has numbers on the bottom of it, 2, 13. I mean, they're not in order, but those numbers correspond with this image, with exactly where you need to solder them to. So the two images, or the two circles that are circled here for ground, you can use either. The ones that are highlighted in blue are unused, and actually I should have highlighted 15 in blue as well because it's also not used. So we're going to solder 2 ground to one of these, 14, 16, 1, 3, 11, and 13. That's what we're going to do. So pop back over to the webcam here. You can see that it's got a nice bead of flux over all of the pads, and that these pads are not pre-tinned. Sometimes they will have a little bit of solder on them already, but I'm going to go ahead and tin these pads by putting a little bit of solder on each one that I'm going to solder to. So that was 2, that was actually 6, but it will be my ground. And I'm going to come down here to 14 and 16. And then I'm going to do 1 and 3, and then the next several are unused, and then we do 11 and 13, and we do not do 15. It is unused. There is, however, on the back side of this crystal, a little small pad, and we will anchor to that. More about why we do that in a little while. To create a nice little solder ball there. On the unlabeled pin here, the one that doesn't have a number above it, there's a black wire that connects, and it has a quick breakaway connector. And that is what gets soldered to here. And we'll use this to control what mode the motherboard is in here in a minute. So that just goes there for quick connect, disconnect. And then we're going to start with 2 on the bottom. So I like to do the lower row first. Yeah. So do the lower row first and then the upper row, because it just makes the installation a little easier. So the 2 was above this purple wire, so we'll get that just right in there. Solder to that pad. The next one is green. I know that because I did G for green for ground when I put the tool together. So that one makes the ground. Then the next one's actually 14, which in my orientation, and this color could be whatever wires you use. You could even use wires that were all the same color, wouldn't matter. This one's for me is red. And then I actually had a few people question me one time. I see you use yellow wire for your C point. I'm out of yellow wire. Can I use blue wire instead? And I don't remember how I answered the guy now. I'm pretty sure I probably insulted him in some way. I don't try to, but I must have responded with like, sure, figure out what kind of wire what kind of wire makes a difference to what the color it is, what color it is, how that actually affects the electricity flowing through it. Kind of a silly thing. But, I mean, not everybody's at the same skill level, so I try to keep that in mind and remember. So that was one. So what are we doing? Bought a new disk drive to send to someone and got it back, but it still didn't work. DVD drives are coded if you have the correct DVD key. 4 a.m. Knitwer mods. What's wrong with your console? So next point, what did we do? We did 1, so now we're at 3, which for me is yellow wire. So we'll hit the next pad, yellow. And then 11 is the orange wire, is the next pad. And the final one, 13 on that last pad. So it's not super beautiful while it's wired in, but it is temporary. And that is how we're going to talk to the 4 gig onboard NAND. So now to do that, right? So first thing that I like to do is take a business card sort of thing and put it under that to keep it from bridging, because all the metal contacts are under there, right? You don't want it to short out. And then in order to put the Xbox in the mode where we can read and write to and from the NAND, you actually want that black wire with the quick disconnect, you want it in the connected position. Alright, so the next part that we're going to do is I've connected power to the console, right? Standby power. But did you notice there's no LEDs or anything lit up on that SD card tool thing? So I'm going to go ahead and get my USB SD card writer ready here. So this is just an SD card reader writer, and this is a USB extension cable. And when I plug this in here, what should happen is we should get a nice solid color on, and that should stay that way for the duration of while we have it talking to the computer. So if we fire up JRunner, what is Windows trying to tell me? Oh yeah. You should also get this message. You need to format the disk before you can use it. You do not want to format it. You want to say cancel, but you should get that message in Windows. Alright, so what we can do is say read NAND, and it asks for an input name where we just say OK, and then we tell it this is a Corona 4 gig, so it brings up the Corona 4 gig window. There's our drive with our size 3696, and then we can say read, and then that goes really fast. I'm not speeding this up at all. It's 48 megabytes that it reads, and it just goes by in a hurry. I'm trying to keep the speed up on these two, so what I'm also going to do while I do this is I'm going to go ahead and say create ECC, and I'm going to go ahead and write the ECC file at the same time so that I don't have to connect the console separately later to write the ECC file. So now I've read the original NANDs and also written my ECC file. So I can come back here now. What I like to do first is cut power, and then I unplug the SD card reader writer, and then I take the end piece disconnected, because it has to be disconnected in order to actually boot. John, cool, yeah, solo service is totally fine. Yeah, so, or do-it-yourself service or send-in service. I was reading the solo guy. So solo, Yeah, you got timed out, and I agree with the mod there. We're going a little heavy on the advertising. I don't specifically advertise disk drive repair services or anything, so it's not so much a compete thing. But I think Xbox Modder knows how I feel about the kind of advertised service. So let's just keep it to on topic. If you got a particular problem, you know, I don't mind a quick throw out, and that's all that really was. But let's just keep it on normal, non-advertising sort of topics. So we've got our NAND read, we've got our ECC written, we're actually ready to install our glitch chip. Now the ACE v3 by default comes pre-programmed with a timing file for Coronas. And you might notice when I just created the ECC file, I did not check the CR4 box. There is a CR4 speedup method for Coronas, but I actually find that in a lot of cases, the default timing file on the ACE v3, because it was designed specifically for Coronas, works the best. So I'm going to go ahead and place this chip in. For positioning on this style of console, what I use for my position guide is this little integrated chip there, whatever it is, I don't actually even know. But I bump the back end of my chip up to it, and then I come over as far as I can comfortably towards this pin header. I realize I'm covering up that other one. In this case, that's totally fine. There's no reason that I need any signal from it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, and that's where I'll just give it a little firm press down. So from there, I'll tin the pads on the ACE here. Let me read this this 4 a.m. guy's dilemma. I'm going to go back up in the chat here a little bit. So this is the kind of Xbox you have, but your disk drive doesn't work or read your games. It was working well until it started to make a weird noise. You bought a new disk drive and sent it to someone to install, but you got it back and you still didn't work. So you had your Xbox for 3 months and you have to get it fixed. So on a disk drive, what was being said there is accurate information. So I'm going to keep working while I do this. I'm going to be trimming off the little lengths of wire off of these. It is true. DVD drives are hard-coded to their motherboard. If you have an E series like this, that means you're going to have a really late model disk drive, possibly a Hitachi, but usually a Lite-On something. And those drives are super locked so that their firmware can't be changed to accommodate for drive replacements. So what you have to do is actually temporarily RGH the console in order to discover the DVD key from the motherboard, and then you have to use an LTU replacement PCB. So you actually pull the PCB board out of the disk drive and then replace it with one that you're able to write the custom firmware to. The other thing is that if you already are rocking an RGH, like if it's a default RGH that's doing this in the first place, you can, in some cases, actually make another disk drive work by modifying the RGH's KV. So you could take a disk drive that you know the DVD key for, and then set your key in the XE build settings and build a NAND with that same key in it. And that would allow you to get your DVD drive functional again. But the bottom line is the key hard-coded in the motherboard and the key in the disk drive are required to be matching in order for any gameplay to work. So I think about these also, E and F, in terms of alphabetical top to bottom order. So E comes before F, E is the top, F is the bottom. So there's E, there's F, So now we're ready to flip over our motherboard and do the little bit of underside work that there is. I like to do the D point on these that I know are going to require a Postfix adapter. At the same time, oh yeah, disable fcrt.bin. That's something you definitely find in the tutorials. Oh, I got my ring of light in the front here. So I'm going to take the motherboard out of the console. I'm going to use this D wire, and I'm actually going to route it through that closest south bridge hole and pull it through on the bottom. So on the bottom side here, there's the wire that I just routed through on the top, and it's actually focused pretty good and quick here. And the point that I'm going to route that to is just above the large hole in the center. Offset here, there's this pattern of 6 little points in a U right there. And so this top right point is where I'm actually going to be connecting to. So solo, yeah, 0 to 3FF for a 16 meg. Not just Jasper, but any 16 meg. So there we go. Actually, that's a little bit better view. So that upper point right here, so this U shape, and it's the one on the right on the top, that is actually where we're going to connect our D wire. So you can see they kind of got a golden tint to them. There's a bit of a coating on there. So I use my scratch pen to make that a little bit more solder friendly. Grab my flux paste, throw a little tiny dab on there, and it's really not much. And then I'm actually going to pre-tin the spot, since it really didn't have a bed of solder on it. So you should be able to see, yeah, that the spot looks totally different now, right? It's got a whole little bit of video or of solder on there. And then when I bring my wire with the tiny little tip on there, it's just a matter of one little bit, and it just solders right to that spot. And then because of how potentially fragile that could be, I like to immediately put a little bit of glue behind the connection. Obviously I don't cover it, but back here I'll put a line of hot glue so that if anybody tugs on it, it'll be able to stand up to the force. So I've got the hot air or the hot glue gun warming up. I didn't have that done before. While we're waiting on that, I'm going to show you the tool. This one is will include a little bit of a shameless plug here, I think, because I sell these on my web store, which is the X-clamp remover tool. I really recommend this if you're going to do consoles that would potentially need to have the X-clamps removed, which is pretty much all of them, especially if you have any plans on doing the thermal paste. I'm going to go grab one of my new ones because I don't see my normal one. Where are they at? Here they are. It looks like I only have 5 or 6 of them left. I'll re-up next time I order. So on the X-clamp remover tool, it's a really basic little spade tool. It's made out of metal. It's pretty strong, but it is somewhat flexible. And it's got this little fork on the end. You could totally make one yourself or whatever, but it just works really perfectly as a little fork to go in the X-clamps alternate side of the connector there, and then just lift up in order to separate the X-clamp from the connector. And I think my hot glue might be hot enough now. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get that in before I do what I am trying to protect against, which is pull on and break that connection. So that's probably a little bit more solder than I needed, but or not solder, hot glue than I needed, but who cares? So now we'll go ahead and take off the X-clamp. I'm holding my hand like a sandwich over the heatsink to keep it from falling off. And I'm flipping it over, and then I'm going to just gently set it off to the side, right? So the thing that you want to look for here and I'm going to need this to focus. Oh, that's actually pretty good. Is on the board here, if you can, come on, focus. There we go, that's pretty good and focused. So on the board here, you can see the traces. Here you can see it really well. So they come out of this chip, and this whole band of traces follows down to here, right? It comes all the way down and over here. And then right on these spots, right, you can see some traces here. But this plane is empty, it's flat, right? There are no traces. So if we flip this over, that angled that angled connector on the back, where on Trinity's we solder our C point or our postfix, that's what this little bed of vias are. Each one of these little dots is called a via. So because there's no trace running to them, there's no signal getting to that point, which is the entire reason that you need a postfix adapter. The postfix adapter literally has a tiny little pogo pin on it, this pin, which reaches in under the XC GPU and makes contact with one of the little solder balls under there and gives you access to that signal. And that's what you need. So when we place this, we'll push it down, and then it should just fall into place. It should not be something that has to be forced big time. Now, these cheap Chinese postfix adapters, unfortunately, have a tendency to actually be the wrong dimension this way. They literally are not the right size. So this one, as I'm forcing it down, I can feel it flexing outward here and putting like a twisting force on the XC GPU. That's really negative, and it's not really what we want to do. We don't want to add any strain there. So what I do is actually take a strong pair of snips here and actually chomp that little section of the PCB off. So it's broken off, and all I'm left with are the top and side movements. So what I'll do in order to get this positioned correctly is I'll take a piece of tape, and I'm going to have it in my other hand on this finger, and what I'll do is I'll set this down. So I'm holding force in this direction so that my side is lined up exactly here, and then I will pull it down. So now I'm in position, right? I'm lined up on the top, I'm lined up on the side. I'll hold force kind of down to hold that in place while I place the tape to hold it here. And the tape is totally just temporary to make sure I have it in the right spot. I'll use a multifunction meter, a multimeter. And I've got it set to 200K ohms, and I've got my probe points here. Let's see if I can do this all up close like. So I'm holding the black line just to the AV shield, and when I probe this little point here, I should get a reading of somewhere around 40. So 35 is right in the neighborhood. And if I touch this point, I should get the same reading basically. So that's your confirmation with power off that you do have connectivity with the C point under there. So it is in position. So now I just want to make sure that it doesn't move, right? So they provide anchor points on this thing, but again, this is the cheap Chinese, because you can't get the originals anymore. This is just like the clone Chinese whatever. So I'll try here to see if I can get that resistor to that one bridge, so that one will hold pretty good. You gotta flow the solder in just right to get it to do. It's a really big gap. Measuring was evidently not their strong suit with whoever they hired to create these clones. So I've got two pretty good anchor points there, and then as if I don't get made fun of for my hot glue usage enough, I feel like I'd rather have a little bit of hot glue on there than the thing be sloppy. So I usually will anchor the end of it down there so I'm off away from the chip entirely. I'll usually put a nice healthy serving right here and overlap onto the PCB in that. And then over past the tape, I'm going to put just a little bit near the end here as an anchor point. But I didn't go over my tape at all, because when I peel that up, I'll put a little dab down here in this pocket. So I'm not even using the other half. So as I peel that up here, I'm not even using the other half of the Postfix adapter. This is just unfortunately what you have to do with those crummy Chinese clones. And then I'll go a little crazy and really hold it in place here. So that thing is not moving, right? If you really wanted to adjust it, Solo just made a DDoS threat. Really? Okay, let him do it. I don't know if he has any method of getting my IP based off a YouTube stream. I think YouTube obscures that, so pretty sure he doesn't even have my IP if he wanted to. Also, I've got some pretty fancy networking equipment. It would affect the ISP, but it certainly wouldn't affect me. I drop all unknown incoming packets at my firewall. So, all right, so the next thing that I'll do here is I'm going to re-wet, actually I'll use the clean side, my pad here. And because I removed the heatsink, as is my policy, when I remove the heatsink, I reapply fresh thermal paste. So I'm just using some rubbing alcohol and a cotton pad just to clean up this old thermal paste. And actually, there's really not even a huge case for doing this. The old thermal paste was probably fine, but probably is not what you want to bank on, right? You don't want somebody's console to not probably overheat. So redoing it is a good fix. On the consoles where I don't end up removing the heatsink, I don't bother to replace the thermal paste because that's not the agreement, right? But when I remove the heatsink, I feel like it's kind of my obligation to refresh the thermal paste. It's kind of part of the deal at that point. Hunter Clark. No, this is not your Xbox, dude. I talked about that. This is one of mine off my shelf. I don't have any other E-Series send-ins, so if this is an E-Series, if your console is an E-Series, then I haven't even received it yet. Okay, so a little bit of thermal paste. Oh, I didn't show you. I put on a little bit of bead of thermal paste. I'm pretty generous with the thermal paste on these units just because they go through a lot of heat cycles and I want it to bond good. But you can see that from that pattern that I laid, I'm going to just press some force down on it and take it back off. It actually expands out rather nicely, covering the vast majority of the chip. And once the X clamp is on there and really holding some force, it will flatten out entirely and cover the entire chip. So I can apply a little bit more force here to help that happen. And then the X clamp will do the rest. And then that last one, sometimes it doesn't want to go on its own, so you kind of flex it and push it down at the same time. So now it's all back in. So now, the only connection that we needed on the backside was that D point, which we already installed. So we're set there. So our last connection point is now you can actually see there's that Postfix adapter coming out from underneath the heatsink. And we're just going to need to run that wire over to the C point. So we'll just use the last red wire that came in the package here. We'll heat up that pad. There's the C connection there. And then I rotate these boards a lot for whatever angle of access is easiest, right? Why not? And then that goes right into the C pad. Boom. And we are fully installed, right? We already wrote our ECC file, so we're good to go there. Our X clamp, or not, man, my vocabulary really. Our SD tool is in the disconnect method, which means it can The Xbox can read and write from its own NAND right now. So we'll put it back in its case. I will put my business card thing back into play. Get a little tear in it. So I'm holding the end away from grounding out, and then I'm protecting the chip from grounding out. And last thing that I'll do here is connect standby power, HDMI, and Ethernet. And then we will boot the thing, which is... So, since I don't have the Ring of Light board, or I don't have a controller synced to it, these Ring of Light boards don't have any physical buttons. And this generation of console, they actually entirely removed the infrared port from it. So my normal method of using my remote doesn't work. There's no infrared sensor on the E-Series consoles. Not a lot of people don't know that. So what I'll do is I'll place this board back for giggles, why not? And then what I do is I use a play and charge cable. So this is a USB to one end and then the controller adapter thing on the other end. And you take a controller and you plug in a cable to it and then into the Xbox, and then press and hold the power button, and there we go. We got power starting up the console. So we also don't have a Ring of Light indicator, right? Because the Ring of Light is built into the faceplate in these, and I'll show you how to do the LEDs in them in a minute. But we don't really have any good indicator other than I can see the output of the other monitor, and we just got Zell boot in 2 glitch cycles. So there were 2 pulses and then Zell. So the onboard built-in timing file is pretty darn good. So what I just did off camera, unfortunately, is I typed in that IP address from Zell and then hit get CPU key. So my CPU key is now populated. So now I can say even create XE build image. While I'm waiting for that to finish, I will disconnect power. I will disconnect my Ethernet, and I'm going to disconnect the controller as well. And then, so our last step here, what we need to do is write that UPD flash.bin to the NAND as the permanent, because right now it's just got the ECC file, so it will only do Zell. So if I plug this back in, right, when this is connected, the console is in read-write mode. And then I connect standby power, right, so this LED lit up. Now when I plug this into my SD card reader, then I should get my light. And then I can come back over here to JRunner, say write NAND, pops up my write option, say here, say write. It says you're about to write, continue, yes. And then it's writing from here, look what it's writing though, UPD flash.bin. That's exactly what we want to see, writing the UPD flash.bin. And this progress usually takes less than 10 seconds or so, so it's completed. There we go, 11 seconds. And now we can go back to the console. I like to disconnect power first, unplug the SD card, and then disconnect here so the console goes back into like operating mode. And we can plug power back in and plug HDMI back in. And let's see if it synced with the wireless controller, or if I'm going to have to use the play and charge cable again. Looks like I'm going to have to use the play and charge cable again. So connect that here with the controller off, plug into the front port, and press and hold guide button. Plug it into the other port. Sometimes it's kind of finicky. Come on, did I not get my batteries back in? Oh, I didn't. I unplugged the batteries to turn it off and I didn't get them snapped back on right. So power on, there we go. We're starting to glitch. 1 pulse, 2 pulse. 3 pulse. So you guys, I don't know if the audio mic is picking up that high pitched noise too. That actually comes from the fan. Some sort of noise that happens from the whole RGH process. It makes the fan do that intermittent thing. So there we just got a boot after about 5 pulses or something. Also, something that I've learned about these is that they will naturally do better in the case with everything reassembled, because that's what they were shooting for, right? So it put us straight into the brand new setup options. So this is what it looks like when you have a brand new console. It goes through this initial setup thing before it hits the dash. So you just go through the options. Alject, I think it is possible to RGH 1.2 a Xenon. I know it's possible, but I do not offer that as a service. So take that for what you want. It's a really big pain in the butt as far as I'm concerned. So there we go. I just shut down the console, and next steps are to unplug HDMI and power. And now we are actually kind of on the path of wrapping up. So we're going to come over here and remove all of the 4 gig reader-writer wires, because now that we've written the UPD flash.bin, if we do need to change the NAND in the future, we can just use simple NAND flasher from the dashboard to write the updated NAND. So I'm just applying a little heat and then using my tweezers to pull the wire away, being sure that I hold it long enough that the solder re-solidifies so it doesn't fall down and stick to something else. So there we go. And then we'll get this little guy, and then we'll just put it back on its end here. And the SD tool is now removed, ready to go back over into its little slot. And we need to do a little bit of cleanup here. So I get a cotton pad, a little rubbing alcohol. I don't know, I feel like I have to talk, but I could sit here and do this in silence. Would that be creepy to stream silence as I am modding? So just lay these out a little bit so that I can get a Q-tip down up in there and really clean the gunk out. It would probably take a bunch of years, but sometimes certain types of flux can be a little bit acidic and can actually run through and eat through a PCB given enough time. So now that that's all wired up, as far as hot glue on the top and wiring things down, what I like to do is put a little bead this way, trying not to block any of the connectors or anything, but just holding that down so that if anybody gives it a strong yank, it's got less of a chance of disappearing. And then I usually will do a little bitty bit on this, dab a little circle, and then finally dab a little circle down on this guy, just to hold it flat so it doesn't get caught on something in the future or whatever. A little bit of flux build up there. There we go. So that's pretty much the pretty final install here. We'll actually start partial reassembly. So I'll go hard drive tray, drive tray, riser, whatever this is called, fan shroud, and then disk drive itself. So power and SATA in. And then typically what I would do at this point is just push it off to the side, plug in power and HDMI, and just leave it. Leave it there while I do the LEDs in the faceplate. Now I'm not going to finalize this one because this console is actually not yet sold, so I don't have the colors that the customer is going to want because he hasn't bought it and told me yet, right? So I'm just going to undo these way too many screws for what this is, right? So I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws for holding in this tiny little PCB. It's kind of crazy in my opinion. Where did that go? There it is. Alright, so now that that's loose, I can literally just lift it right out. Be careful with this stuff because it will come out now. There's nothing holding it down. So I just would recommend keeping the thing flat and laying down wherever you're going to store it out of the way. I'm going to put it in the bin that I keep over here. So now the LEDs on this board are actually quite simple. The little symbol that they give next to each one lines up or matches quite nicely with what the symbol on LEDs look like for polarity. So it actually does a really good job of telling you the polarity of the LEDs that you need and how to orient them. For now, what I'm going to do is just remove the default green LEDs because very few people choose that option. And if somebody did choose that option, I've got one more E-series on the shelf. I could just pull its LED board out with the default greens and leave it. My luck, somebody will go on my site and order one of these with default greens just because I said this. But whatever. So you can see it's kind of a float method. And then the big boy in the middle here, there's 2 sets of pads, right, top and bottom. So what I do is bridge them with solder and then kind of create a big puddle of it here. And then back and forth until it's hot enough on both sides to just slide off. And then you can just kind of clean up the pad by touching it again, and the solder will just kind of all go in. So those are the pads that I will attach the LEDs, 0603 SMD LEDs. That's where they'll get attached. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and store that in the little parts bin with this console. So I said in the description here, I said complete process. So for somebody that would be interested in how else I would handle this, the last final little changes would obviously include reassembling the console. That doesn't make sense for me right now, again, like I said, because I still need to do the LEDs once somebody orders this thing. So what I'll do is use this controller, which is synced to it now, to power the thing up, and I'll do my normal software installation so that that part's at least taken care of, which means avatar update and then XEX menu, freestyle dash, dash launch, all that sort of good stuff. So it looks like that one was about a 3 glitch cycle boot, still really nice and fast. Like I said, I really like that timing file on these consoles, the default built-in one. So first thing that I do is install the USB that contains the update, and what you see here is that it has popped up and said update required, so I'm going to tell it yes because I know that it has the latest dash on it, and I know that it's safe to apply the avatar update to that. So that's what I'm doing here. Unzipped on the USB drive that I have inserted right now is the 17511 dashboard update avatar pack thing. You can download it right off of xbox.com. So there it went through and it just rebooted actually. So you can see that, or you might be able to hear that high-pitched noise coming from the fan. So it's done 2 glitches. And then for a reboot here, so 3, 4. When you don't cut power, the system auto rebooted. It sometimes doesn't give the best glitch times the next boot after that. So since the system automatically restarted itself with no like hard power off in the middle, it's not ideal as far as the boot time. So there it goes. It was what, like 6 or something. So you know, it is what it is. There you go. So there it is, booting to dash with the avatar update installed. So now I'm unplugging my update USB. I'm plugging in my USB that has XEX menu, Freestyle Dash, and Dash Launch loaded. So now when I bump over to my storage settings, I should be able to copy. So from the USB unit, copy XEX menu. Copy XEX menu to, I said to the same place. Copy XEX menu to the onboard memory unit. Are you guys seeing any lag or anything? YouTube's still complaining about my keyframe frequency. It says it doesn't like that I've got it set to 8. It wants more. You want every 2 seconds? How about that? Apply. Would you like a faster keyframe? I don't know if that'll take effect until the next time I restart the stream, but not really. It's not buffering. You're doing all right. Alright, so now we've got XEX menu installed. When we go to the games menu, we see the copy on the USB and the copy on the internal memory unit. What's up, Fat Jesus 45? Right bumper over to the USB. We'll go down to this folder I've got named Tosser. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Shut up. Launch the default.xex for 1 copy of Freestyle Dash, and then I'll use its ability to read and write from the 4 gig module in order to copy and paste the stuff onto the internal memory unit. So I'm going to the file manager. You can see there's the onboard memory unit. So I'm going to copy from the USB. I'm going to put Dash Launch over there, and then I'm going to put Freestyle over there. The Cool Gamer Kid, can I have a shout out, please? If you ask for a shout out, is it still a shout out? Or has it been shotten out? Is it, I don't know. I don't know what the same is. Just say hey. The last guy got a shout out for saying hey. So then we're gonna go into the Dash Launch folder, launch default.xex. And then the last thing that I do is set the default boot path to the onboard memory, Freestyle default, so that it will boot into XEX menu going forward. So there, when I hit B to exit Dash Launch, it did its default action, which was to launch Freestyle. So real quickly, I will, from the controller, since I don't have a physical button on the console, I'll turn the console off. And then, just to show you one last time now. So no USBs, no nothing in the console, just the controller. I'm going to go ahead and power it on. And you can see there that it's the fan starts spinning and it starts up. If we lift this real careful, actually just got a first glitch instant boot. So first cycle, there was only one pulse, whatever. You're getting an RGH this week. Cool. For me, are you buying one here, or did you do a send-in or something? And then you can see it boots up directly into Freestyle. Never had to do anything. So this one is basically done, other than the fact that somebody needs to buy it, and I will put the LEDs of their choice on it at that point, and then fully reassemble it and ship it out. So that's exactly how I would do a 4 gig Corona RGH with a Postfix adapter, having to bridge. I mean, this is basically as complicated as any Corona gets. This is, in my humble opinion, this is the most difficult type of console to RGH, because there are so many variables to it, right? You had to use the 4 gig pad and not the JTAG header. You had to bridge those points up here. We had to install the Postfix adapter. I mean, there was a lot that went into this, right? But that was it. We're only an hour and 11 minutes into this video, and I talked and got distracted quite a bit. So, what's that, Xbox Manager? What's up? Do I prefer Aurora or Freestyle Dash? I've only had limited experience with Aurora because, by choice, really. When I checked it out the first time, it still didn't have a lot of the basic functionality that Freestyle has. It didn't have a built-in FTP server. I didn't see a way to modify the fan speed. I didn't see a traditional regular file browser at all. So there were just a lot of things that it was cool, its display, its presentation. And I know that like the cover art servers have gone offline for Freestyle Dash, but as a utility, from specifically the point of view of the most functional tool, I think that Freestyle Dash is still a more functional tool. I guess if I was really motivated, I would try to figure out a way to stand up some replacement internal server for the cover art, because that was really cool, having the cover art able to populate. But I don't really care about it that all much, you know, like it's not, cover art's not the end of the world to me. So... You live in Australia, so I will sell internationally, as it says on my websites under the frequently asked questions, but I do require that international orders are paid for with Bitcoin. It's just a risk thing. I got burned on some international orders early on where they decided they wanted to return stuff or whatever, and then wanted me to eat the almost $80 shipping. Because shipping overseas is really ridiculously expensive these days. It wouldn't surprise me if a package as small as an Xbox console shipped to Australia would be as much as like $75 via like regular USPS mail. So I used to straight up say that I didn't do international. I've softened on that a little bit, and I will do international, but you have to pay with Bitcoin. I realize, I totally get it. Bitcoin is a pain in the ass. It's not an ideal method yet because it's just not that easy to use. But with places like Circle, so Circle.com, Coinbase, local Bitcoins, there are a lot of ways that you can get Bitcoins. So if you want an international order bad enough, check out my prices. Everything's in USD, and look into Bitcoin, and we can definitely make something work if you want. You have a bricked console. Does that mean you have a bad NAND? That's the definition of bricked, yes. In relation to the Xbox console, bricked means has a bad NAND. So, That said, my children are coming down the stairs now. I'm certain that they want something from me. Say hi, children.
Hi.
Hi, children. Oh, hold on. You guys are about to get a face full of me. There we go. Children! Say hello to the internet.
Hi.
Hi, internet.
I don't like to be on the internet.
You don't like to be on the internet. Okay. So anyway, I'm gonna call it again. So we've done 2 full consoles online today. This one being an E-series. Like I said, these are all going to be cut down and edited into better tutorials. But any last burning questions before we call it here? Guys, a little loud. How can you avoid getting a brick? Don't flash your NAND with stupid files. Follow good tutorials when building updated dashboards.
See? It's great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Weekend Modder signing out.